I am Ethan Riley, an economics professor, and I used to think I could see through everything in life, but I was wrong. That day, I had just finished my lecture on economic theory in my afternoon class. The feeling of relief when the workday ended always made me feel free, as if I could take a long, deep breath. But as soon as I stepped out of the classroom, something unexpected made me uneasy. Lena, a colleague from the department, approached me. She wasn't the type to be easily deceived, but today, her expression was unusual. Something was off. "Ethan, I just saw Clara," Lena said, her eyes fixed on mine. "Clara? Where?" I asked, my voice slightly tense. "Clara is my wife," and those words made a small ripple in my heart. She was at a cafe near the hospital, sitting talking to a man. That man is Zane Blackwell. Lena paused for a moment, as if waiting for my reaction. Zane Blackwell. I had heard that name from a few basketball stories, a professional player whom she had mentioned a few times. However, I never thought that he would be the one to make Clara, my wife, have a relationship that went beyond the ordinary. I just thought it was a misunderstanding. "Lena, it's probably just friends. Clara has nothing to hide from me, right?" I tried to keep calm, but something in my chest felt uneasy. Lena looked at me, her eyes blinking slightly, almost as if she was scrutinizing me. Then she continued, "Ethan, I'm not sure, but you should be careful. Today, Clara wasn't just talking to him. They were exchanging looks that were very close." The feeling in my chest tightened like a balloon about to burst. I felt like I had just been doused with cold water. Clara, the wife I had trusted for all these years, could do that behind my back? Lena's words were like a sharp knife stabbing my heart. I knew I couldn't keep living in this haze. If something was going on, I needed to know right away. The next day, I decided to follow Clara. She didn't know I had started to suspect, and I just wanted to know the truth, no matter how bitter it might be. Clara said she would be working at the hospital that afternoon. I decided to follow her. I drove through the streets, turning into smaller roads around the areas she often frequented. I tried to avoid being detected, keeping a safe distance, but close enough to not miss anything. I parked near a small cafe close to the hospital. It felt like I was standing in the middle of a mess. I couldn't stop now. I had to continue. A moment later, I saw Clara. She came out of the hospital with her familiar face, but I couldn't help but notice the man standing next to her. Zane Blackwell. There was no doubt now. They weren't just talking. Clearly, there was a level of intimacy between them. Zane gently touched Clara's arm, and she smiled easily, as if the world around them didn't exist. I stood there, suddenly feeling exhausted and confused. Everything seemed to blur. I knew I couldn't stay here any longer. I quietly turned back to my car and drove home. When I entered the house, Clara wasn't home yet. The atmosphere in the house felt empty, as if there were an invisible distance between us. Avery, our daughter, was sitting on the couch, playing by herself. I tried to force a smile, but it didn't come from my heart. Clara came home late as usual. She said she had finished work and wanted to rest. But when I looked into her eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Clara didn't pay attention to me, as if I were just a shadow in this house. I decided not to say anything at that moment. I wouldn't confront her without enough evidence. But the feeling inside me could not be erased. The suspicion had started to take root in my mind. That night, after Clara had gone to bed, I sat in my office, turning over the thoughts and situations I had just witnessed. I looked at the family photo hanging on the wall. How could everything change so quickly? A question with no answer. But one thing I knew was that I couldn't continue living in this uncertainty anymore. I needed to know the truth. I can't accept this. A normal man might be blinded by love, but I can't let myself be deceived any longer. I need to know the truth. I continued to follow Clara. I couldn't escape this tension. Every day, every hour, I looked at her as though I was seeing a stranger. Was my love for her just an illusion? Or was there really something I hadn't seen? Thursday that day was an important one. Clara had left the house early, as always, with the excuse of work. But I knew that her work wasn't the real reason. I decided I wouldn't let her slip away from my watch so easily. I quietly followed her, keeping a distance so I wouldn't be noticed. Clara was driving our car, the one I had cherished for so many years, heading out of town. It felt strange, as though I was following an enemy rather than the wife I had once loved. We passed familiar streets, and I began to feel anxious as she drove into the suburban area, where there were large, luxurious villas and wide lands with big iron gates. This was the place I knew Clara had been with Zane. The weight of worry pressed down on me. I moved closer and started observing every movement. Finally, Clara's car stopped in front of a large house. She got out, and I saw a figure walking out from inside the house. I squinted, recognizing that it was Zane Blackwell, the famous basketball player. I gripped the steering wheel, feeling as if I had fallen into a nightmare. I couldn't believe my eyes, but there was no doubt they were meeting, and not just as friends. Zane smiled at Clara, his eyes full of challenge and confidence. Clara returned the smile easily, but in her gaze, I sensed something unfamiliar, something not the love a wife gives to a husband. I felt the pain of realizing that everything I had known about Clara might have been a facade. I couldn't stand there forever, the feeling inside me wanting to explode in my chest. I quietly left the area, turned back to my car. My eyes blurred with tears I couldn't shed. Had I been living in a movie that I couldn't change the ending to? But I couldn't give up. I needed to know exactly what was going on. The pain swelled within me. My whole life I had dedicated to Clara, trusted her, and now I stood here, lost. But I couldn't let this destroy me. I had to find out the truth. When I got home, Clara was already back. But there was something about her that wasn't like usual. She went straight upstairs without saying a word to me. I stood there, watching her silhouette, feeling a profound loneliness. But I couldn't keep enduring this. The next day, I decided not to let myself sink deeper into uncertainty. I wouldn't just wait and live in doubt. I called Harper Blackwell, Zane's wife, whom I had found through social media posts. I couldn't do this alone, and I thought Harper might help me since she had been enduring this for so long. Harper listened to everything, not interrupting, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Finally, after a long silence, Harper spoke. I don't want to live in lies anymore. I know Zane has been cheating, and Clara isn't the only one. I'll help you. I felt some relief knowing I wasn't alone in this fight, but I knew that what was coming would be the most important step in my life. To get justice, I had to prepare myself for what was about to happen. That weekend, I met Harper at a small cafe near downtown. She had prepared a detailed plan. We would follow Zane and Clara's meeting at the lakeside villa the following Thursday. She would help me capture images and videos to provide irrefutable evidence. With her cold and sharp intelligence, Harper had devised a meticulous plan to ensure Zane and Clara wouldn't discover us. I just needed to sit back and wait, watching as justice would be served. But something else was starting to emerge in my heart, not vengeance, but fear of unforeseen consequences. I began to question whether I could really go through with this, and if I did, what would I be facing? At that moment, I realized it wasn't revenge I wanted. I just wanted the truth, no matter how painful it might be. But would the truth bring me peace, or would I just get more pain? I couldn't stop thinking about what was to come. For the entire week, I couldn't calm down, always feeling like I was on the edge of something irreversible. Finally, I decided I had to do this. I had to face Clara. The night before, as Harper and I prepared the plan to capture the evidence, I sat in my office for hours, staring at the clock on the wall. Each second seemed to pass faster as my heart raced. I didn't know how I would face Clara, but one thing was certain. I needed the truth, even if it meant destroying everything. That morning, I couldn't eat breakfast. The feeling inside me was like something about to explode in my chest, uncontrollable. Clara left the house with her usual smile, as if nothing had changed. She said she would go to the hospital and then stop by the store to buy something. A gentle lie, as if she were so used to this deceit. I called Harper right after Clara left. It was time. She had arranged for us to meet at a cafe by the lake, where I would present my plan. This confrontation, I knew, was unavoidable. I couldn't continue living in this chaos. I had to end it. When I arrived at the cafe, Harper was already there, her demeanor calm and composed. She looked at me, her eyes sharp like a knife. "Are you ready?" Harper asked. I nodded. Part of me felt scared, but another part felt like I had been waiting for this moment for too long. Harper lightly tapped the table, as if trying to pull me out of my chaotic thoughts. I'm ready. We won't let Zane and Clara find out. We'll record everything. At this point, there's no reason to stay silent anymore. We both sat in silence for a moment, thinking about what was about to happen. Then Harper added, Don't worry, I'll handle everything. You just need to wait and witness. Thursday came, and I couldn't control my emotions. Clara had told me she would go out and work, but I knew that was just a lie. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to do what I had promised myself for a long time. I drove to the lakeside area, where Zane lived. The villa was as beautiful and luxurious as always, but this time, it no longer felt like a peaceful place. I noticed Clara's car parked nearby, and my heart tightened. I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. When Clara got out of the car, holding hands with Zane, I almost couldn't stand. They laughed and talked like a real couple. Zane looked at Clara with a magnetic gaze, and Clara, with a bright smile, didn't even notice my presence. That scene felt like a slap to my face. Just at that moment, Harper appeared. She quickly walked over to me, pulling me behind a bush to avoid being seen. She was holding her phone, ready to record everything. Let's do this, Harper said, her voice firm. Are you mentally prepared? I could only nod. The tension built up with every passing second. This video would be all I needed. But then, I didn't expect things to unfold in a way I couldn't have anticipated. As soon as Harper started recording, Clara and Zane walked into the house. Both were laughing, unaware that they were being recorded. I stood there, watching them disappear into the house, and then something within me rose up. An indescribable emptiness. I couldn't feel the victory. There was no joy, only deep pain. I wanted to leave, but part of me wanted to see the outcome. I wanted to know if this truth would bring me the relief I sought. A while later, Clara came out, but Zane was not with her. She looked around and then walked toward the car. I stood there, feeling like a loser, even though I had all the evidence I needed. Harper looked at me, her eyes full of sympathy. You can end it now, Ethan. You can resolve everything right now. But I just stood there, not saying a word. I felt too exhausted. In the end, I realized, perhaps I didn't need to confront Clara right now. I could do that later. What mattered was that I had the proof. But I didn't feel like I had one. That feeling, when I knew the truth, wasn't relief. It was an endless emptiness. I had done everything, and now I had to face the consequences I couldn't have imagined. After the confrontation with Clara and Zane at the lakeside, I felt like I had opened a door I couldn't close. Even though I had everything I needed to end the marriage, I didn't feel any relief. In fact, I felt empty. That feeling clung to me, drowning me in a swamp of anger, disappointment, and even guilt. I looked at the video Harper had recorded, seeing Clara and Zane in an intimate moment. This scene was painful, like someone was slowly tearing apart my heart. But I knew I couldn't stop now. It was too late to turn back. I had to do this for myself, for my own respect. I started thinking about my plan. I needed to figure out how to not only free myself from this relationship, but also make Clara pay for what she had done. But throughout the next week, I couldn't stop questioning my own motives. Was I doing the right thing? Would revenge truly make me feel better? Harper had helped me a lot, but I felt like I had to decide the path forward on my own. A week later, I visited an old friend, Mark, a lawyer I had known since college. Mark wasn't just an excellent lawyer, but also a trusted friend. I told him my story, about Clara's betrayal and the video I had in hand. Ethan, I understand how you feel, Mark said, looking directly at me. But don't forget, revenge can cost you more than you think. It's better that you do this the right way. I'll help you if you want. I could feel the sincerity in Mark's words, but there was something inside me that couldn't stop. I wanted revenge. It was something I had been thinking about for the past few days. I want the truth to come out, Mark. And I want Clara to pay for her actions, I said, my voice no longer gentle. Mark didn't object. In fact, I could feel the determination in his eyes. I'll help you, Mark said. We'll do everything by the book, but I also understand that you need to prove that Clara can't keep living this lie. As soon as I decided to pursue the divorce case, I received a phone call from Harper. She had some news I needed to hear. Ethan, I just received shocking news. Zane is planning to leave the city with Clara. They're going to leave together this weekend. Run away from it all. This will make it impossible for you to go to court, Harper said. I couldn't believe my ears. Clara and Zane were planning to run away? We can't let this happen, I said, determined. Harper, we need to act right now. Harper paused for a moment and then said, I have a plan. To make sure they can't leave, we'll force them to face the truth right now. The next day, Harper and I put the plan into action. We weren't going to let Clara and Zane run away. I had prepared everything. The video, the evidence, and information about the truth behind their relationship. Harper found a way to approach Zane's wife, Olivia Blackwell. She had known what had been going on, but didn't have solid evidence. Harper knew she was in a crisis, so she approached Olivia and told her about our plan. Olivia had no choice but to agree to help. If Zane and Clara were planning to leave, she would have to face the truth about her husband and Clara. I stood waiting outside Zane's mansion, tension rising. Harper stood next to me, watching every move Clara and Zane made, the ones I could no longer call husband and wife. When Clara and Zane left the house, I knew this was the turning point. I couldn't let them escape responsibility. As they got into the car, Harper and I immediately rushed toward them. Harper quickly got close to Zane, holding him back while I confronted Clara. She turned around, her eyes wide with panic when she saw me. Ethan, what are you doing here? Clara yelled, trying to stay calm but not hiding her fear. You can't run away anymore, Clara. I have all the proof. I know what you and Zane have been doing, I said, my voice cold as ice. Zane stood there, motionless, glaring at me. But deep down, he knew we had come too close to the truth to turn back. In the end, I decided to let the truth speak for itself. I called the police and brought them here to clarify everything. Zane and Clara had no choice but to face the consequences. I didn't feel victorious, and I didn't feel that revenge was what I needed. Everything just made me feel exhausted. I was too drained to keep fighting. But I knew one thing. I had done the right thing. Sometimes, I wonder if revenge is worth it when I'm the one who has to pay the price first. And there are things that can't be changed, no matter how hard we try. The police arrived, and everything moved quickly. Clara and Zane were arrested on the spot, and all the truth was laid bare. I stood there, my eyes fixed on them, but I didn't feel satisfaction. Honestly, I felt nothing but overwhelming emptiness. I had spent so many years in love and loyalty, and now everything was in ruins. But just then, a phone call came that changed everything. Ethan, something's wrong? Please come home immediately. Harper's voice was urgent. I didn't need any more details. A cold wave ran through my body. Everything suddenly felt blurred. I left the scene immediately, my mind racing, unable to think clearly. When I got home, all I could feel was an unusual atmosphere. I rushed into the house, didn't see anyone in the living room, but my eyes caught a different scene. My daughter, Avery, was sitting in front of the TV, staring blankly at a cartoon, but what terrified me was, she was by herself. My heart seemed to stop when I saw no sign of Clara. Where was she? Avery, where's Mom? I asked, my voice trembling. Avery looked at me, her face emotionless. Mom's not coming back, Daddy, Avery said, her eyes red. A cold chill ran down my spine. I rushed upstairs to the bedroom. The scene before me was impossible to believe. Clara was lying there, motionless, on the floor, her face no longer the lively one I had loved. I couldn't understand what had happened. Everything suddenly felt blurred. I immediately called the police, but their response made me feel paralyzed. We can't do anything, Dr. Riley. From the initial report, your wife passed away this morning. It seems like there was some sort of sharp weapon involved. Zane Blackwell is also dead. My whole world collapsed instantly. I had gotten close to the truth, but I never thought I'd have to witness such a tragic ending. I began to feel regret pouring in. Was I the one ultimately responsible for Clara's death? Had I pushed her down this path? A question without an answer, because now everything was too late. Harper was standing outside the house, her eyes filled with concern. When she saw me, her look was full of sympathy but also heavy with weight. Ethan, you need to calm down. This is beyond your control. You can't keep acting like this. I couldn't listen to her. I couldn't accept this. Everything now was just confusion and endless pain. Clara was gone, and all I had was the video, the evidence, all the revenge I had wanted. But now, I wanted nothing. Then, there was something even more surprising. While I was still struggling with the pain and conflict inside me, I received a call from the police. When I answered, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dr. Riley, we've just received information from the police. Tyrone Blackwell, Zane's wife, came to your house, and not just once, but faced both of them tonight. And she had a gun. This was hard to believe. Zane, Clara, and now Tyrone, Zane's wife, was also caught up in this whirlwind. I couldn't understand it. It was truly beyond imagination. I felt like I was stepping into a quagmire with no escape. Everything I had done, every decision I had made, now seemed like a series of mistakes after mistakes. I found myself in a chaotic situation. I turned to meet Harper, and together, we faced the truth we had created. The price I had to pay for this revenge was too steep. I had been consumed by pain and bitterness, and now, I had not only lost my wife, but also had to face the consequences of a series of events I couldn't control. When everything settled down, I found myself facing an orphan child and an uncertain future. Avery needed me, and I needed to be strong for her. I couldn't let her endure this pain any longer. So, I decided to continue with my life, not for revenge, but to find a way to live better, to become a father worthy of her. At that moment, I realized, no matter how everything ends, I still have to keep living. Nothing can change the past, but I can still decide how I face the future. Everything inside me was torn apart. The cost of revenge was too high, and I paid the highest price possible. Last night, I sat blankly in front of Clara's bedroom door, looking at old photos, our memories. Those memories no longer meant anything. Clara was gone forever, and I couldn't go back. But what I couldn't overlook was Avery. My daughter needed me more than ever. She had lost her mother, and I couldn't let her lose her father too. In this moment, Avery was the only reason I could keep going. She was the only reason I could overcome this pain, no matter how hard it might be. I started a long journey to heal. Although it was late, I decided I had to change. My whole life had been dedicated to my career and family career, but now I realized I needed to spend time with my daughter. No more stressful meetings, no more endless long classes. Avery needed me, and I needed her. Harper continued to be by my side. She was the only one who hadn't left me throughout this journey. However, I still couldn't shake the feeling of exhaustion and emptiness inside. After all, Harper had helped me a lot, but I knew that I had to face my own emotions. One morning, after a long night full of anxious dreams, Avery was sitting, waiting for me in the kitchen. She looked at me with wide eyes, full of worry. "Dad, where's Mom?" she asked, her voice full of innocence. That question felt like a knife stabbing my heart. I didn't know how to answer. I had been trying to avoid that question since Clara passed away, but now I realized I couldn't continue living in avoidance. I had to tell Avery the truth. "Mom's not here anymore, Avery. She's gone." Avery looked up at me, her eyes filled with confusion. But then, she gently hugged me, as if no further explanation was needed. That hug, simple yet powerful, was everything I needed at that moment. Avery needed me, and I needed to be strong to set an example for her. After that day, I decided to change my way of living. I started rearranging my work and spending time with Avery. We walked together in the park, had dinner together, and did simple things I hadn't had time for before. That's how I began to heal. Not by forgetting everything, but by living authentically with what I had and cherishing the things that matter most. Harper continued to help us, but gradually, I realized that I couldn't keep living in the past. Clara's death, though tragic, had awakened me. I couldn't change the past, but I could control how I responded to it. I could choose to live in regret, or I could choose to love my daughter and be the best father I could be. A month later, our lives started to stabilize again. I began focusing on my work, but I no longer let work take up all my time. I spent time with Avery, helping her get through the loss and teaching her that strength doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from accepting it and learning how to move forward. One evening, When Avery and I were sitting in the living room watching a cartoon she liked, I suddenly realized that life still goes on. Although Clara was no longer here, I had learned how to stand strong, how to love, and how to appreciate the simple things. Avery finally smiled, her eyes lighting up as she looked at me. "Dad, I love you," she said. I smiled and hugged her tightly. Those were precious moments I would never forget. And even though the past would always be with me, I knew that I could face the future stronger. Some wounds cannot be healed with medicine or apologies. But there is one thing I have learned. No matter how painful things are, you can still rise and move forward. Life doesn't wait for anyone, and it always goes on. Time passed, and the storms inside me slowly calmed. Each day, I learned a new lesson about strength, forgiveness, and how I could be the best father for Avery. She had started smiling again, but in her eyes, there was still some worry, as if the pain hadn't completely gone away. But I couldn't let her feel that I, too, was afraid to face the future. Harper remained the only trusted friend beside me throughout this time. Our relationship changed in a very natural way. At first, I wasn't sure about it, but gradually, I realized that Harper wasn't a replacement for Clara, but rather a friend, a companion who helped me get through difficult times. We still talked every day, but everything now was very light. No more discussions of revenge or loss. One Saturday morning, I woke up early, feeling like I was stepping into a new beginning. Avery was sitting in the dining room, drawing a picture, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Dad, I drew this for you," she said, pointing to the paper on the table. The picture was a simple drawing of a house, with a bright sun in the sky and 3 people standing together. "Dad, Mom, and me," she added, her voice full of pride. I looked at the picture, my eyes blurred with emotion. It was a beautiful picture, but also a reminder of what had passed. Clara was no longer here, but Avery's picture was all I could hold on to, all the memories and love I could pass on to her. "You drew beautifully, Avery," I said, and hugged her tightly. Even though I had lost my wife, I still had my daughter, and she was all I needed now. Old memories couldn't be retrieved, but I could build a bright future for Avery. Months later, I started realizing that I could stand strong again. I returned to my work, but I no longer let work take everything from me. I learned to put family first. Avery needed me, and I would always be there for her. Harper had also found her own happiness. After some time, she decided to move to another city to seek new opportunities. We didn't keep in touch regularly, but I knew that she always wished the best for Avery and me, and I would always remember the support she gave me during those difficult months. A year passed, and I began to feel that I had truly moved past the past. Each day was a new opportunity to rebuild the shattered pieces of my life. Avery had started kindergarten, and I had become the father she needed. One day, while we were sitting in the park, I saw Avery playing with some other kids. She ran over to me, her face beaming with a bright smile. "Dad, I made a new friend," she said, holding my hand. I smiled, feeling a sense of relief. This was the moment I had always been waiting for. Although everything had changed, what mattered most was still here: love, strength, and the will to keep living. One day, I went to Clara's grave. I no longer felt anger or regret, only an unusual sense of peace. I sat by the grave and gently said, "You're gone, Clara. I can't change what happened, but I will continue living for Avery. Thank you for bringing her to me. I will be a good father." At that moment, I felt as if I had truly forgiven myself and also forgiven Clara. Although the past would always be a part of me, I was ready to keep moving forward.